Hello and welcome. I am the Restless Kaiser, and once again we're having an update from Modelling for Advantage with me and a few of the other contributors on the channel. This week's episode is about fantasy in its various forms, miniatures and games. Last week we had a video out which was an unboxing of the Honey and Stuart kit for Flames of War and Tanks, and the next video you're going to see from us is going to be my unboxing of Prophecy of the Wolf and what we're going to do with that set. So on the news front, I guess the biggest news that's on the cards at the moment is the so-called big 40k preview, which we've been told about. There's a lot of speculation out there. There's a few things that we've been previewed recently and in the past that it may be. Much speculation is around a new 9th edition. Personally, I sincerely hope it is not a new edition. I think this edition is okay, and I really don't want to see any major changes to the rules. I would like to see an 8.5 where they kind of tidy up some of the rules that are a little bit messy and clarify them, and just consolidate a lot of those errata and updates into a single place. It seems most likely though that what we're going to see is some kind of Necron update, because we've had lots of information about those. Maybe the return of the Silent King, and some of the fiction stories that they've released on their website seem to relate to what may be a new pariah which kind of infests and takes over a human host. Interesting times for Necron players. The other big thing that it might be is a while ago now there were some really grainy images released of what looked like some kind of light infantry force for the Space Marines based around the bikes and the skimmers and things like that, which again is a kind of gap in the Primaris range. As grainy as those pictures were, they did look convincing. So it may be that we're going to see a new box set with some of those released alongside some new Necron models. Who knows? But apparently the preview's on Saturday. Let's check it out. So the main feature, fantasy games and miniatures. First up, let's hear from Mr. Johnny B over in the bunker. What have you got for us, John?
Thank you, Kaiser. And this week is Fantasy Week.
I'm going to show you some of my Blood Bowl orcs, and
I'm going to show you something I painted a very long time ago.
Let's have a little look then, eh? Whoop, whoop. Well, first up is one of my Black Orc blockers. Now, they only come in this pose, so this one's got a bit of a head swap, but it's kind of cool. I love this team. To help them keep track of everything that they're not scoring, I have a wonderful little snotling on a mushroom, and then I've got a little squig, and he runs up the track if I score, which I rarely do. First up are Rose's minis.
So this is my Wood Elf Sorceress, and to be fair, I generally like painting single models.
Which then leads us on to this one.
And this is my Treekin, and I love the cute little blue sprite on it.
It is pretty cute. Anyway, let's wrap this one up. Boop! Well, that's all from us.
Back to you, Kaiser.
Thanks for watching.
Oh, and Rosie too. I didn't know you were going to do that. So, fantasy games then. The fantasy games for me was the very beginning. I talked before about my beginnings with historical gaming, which the First World War was a big part of, and so was Napoleonic, something I haven't looked at in a lot of years. But the first tabletop battles that I played were 3rd edition, I think it was, Warhammer Fantasy. I quickly moved on from that, but it was a very important part of my formative years, moved sort of from D&D into that. So one of the games that I've been looking at quite closely recently to maybe try and rekindle a bit of that love is Kings of War. But more on that in a moment. Next up, Mr. James Workshop.
Hello, this week's topic is fantasy, and as the Kaiser has rudely outright refused to show my dramatic one-man retelling of the 50 Shades of Grey saga, I guess I'm going to have to do something else. This. Some cards. This is the latest Magic the Gathering set, a Courier Lair of Behemoths, at the time of recording, released literally for today. For each set I purchased 2 items, which are a booster box containing 36 booster packs of cards, and a bundle which has a storage box, 10 boosters, and a couple of accessories. For those who haven't played, Magic the Gathering is a fantasy trading card game from Wizards of the Coast, the same people who make Dungeons & Dragons, and as such, it takes place in its own sort of science fantasy setting that recently has actually been having some crossover with Dungeons & Dragons, so presumably they're now a canonical part of the same universe. The game's recently had its 25th anniversary and still seems to be going strong. The main reason I purchased a bundle, previously known as a fat pack, for reasons I have absolutely no idea of, is for the storage box that it comes in. There's a collection of those little storage boxes under my living room table that keep a track of the sets as we go, so if I want to find a card for a deck that I'm building, it's easier to find. There's also an oversized dice that you'll see in a second, normally used for tracking life totals, and some lovely addictive booster packs. I've been playing Magic the Gathering for a number of years now. When my love for modelling is in a bit of a lull, that sort of fills the hole in my hobby time. I've got a couple of different groups that I play with, and also down at my friendly local gaming store, and have great fun and games ranging from sort of beer and pretzels to hard competitive play. Most commonly play a format called Commander, which lends itself to long and casual games. One thing that is a little bit unusual about this specific set is that in each booster there is a box topper booster, as well as the normal 36 that you get. A box topper contains a promotional card, which in this case is a promotional tie-in with Toho for Godzilla. In 25 years of Magic the Gathering, there's never been a normal set that's had a box topper, so it's quite exciting little addition there. As a very quick look at what I purchased for Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, the latest Magic the Gathering set. This isn't a sponsored video. Thank you very much for watching. See you all next time.
Thank you for that, James. The other thing in relation to fantasy, before I talk about Kings of War, is this. Some of you may have something like this, some of you may have done this, and just a few sort of cautionary tales on it. This is my 3D resin dungeon. It's from Ainsley Castings. It's lovely. It's not cheap to get a set like this. And I started by seeing it, I think it was Salute maybe 20 years ago, and thought, this stuff looks awesome. I've got to have that in my life. And I bought some, and then I bought some more, and it's great, but it is not without some problems or reservations. You can see on here that I kind of drew out in Sharpie what I wanted this little dungeon sequence to be. Maybe you can see, maybe you can't, maybe I should get a still. But the way that the tiles tessellate doesn't quite work as you would expect. I mean, it's all pretty straightforward stuff, but the walls in this particular set are embedded on a tile. So they don't quite work as you would expect, I think. And it takes a great deal longer to set this up than you ever account for. And then you run into the problem about how you mount it. A lot of these pieces are loose, but others have had to stick down with blue tack and so forth. And then when you come to stack them later, you got to get all that blue tack off. You also need loads more of it than you think. But more on this next. Let's hear from Clueless Mike from Team Clueless 40k.
Okay, this week we're talking about fantasy miniatures. First off, I've got a couple of D&D miniatures that I've painted up recently. These are for a group I play with sometimes on a Saturday. There is a Tabaxi Rogue and a Goliath Paladin. These are from the Nolzur's Marvellous Minis range that's licensed out by Wizards of the Coast. Then the things I'm actually working on at the moment, I'm painting up some Demonettes of Slanesh to go into an Age of Sigmar army. These are painted all with contrast paints, which is something I don't use a whole lot of. They certainly have their uses, but I think on Daemons they work very well. And I'm doing them in mainly mauves, pinks, purples, and then finish them off with metallic gold. I haven't gone to the full details as yet on them, but I'm liking where they're at the moment. Okay, thanks for watching.
Thank you for that, Michael. So the second thing to note about this is that idea that some of us will encounter who've been in the hobby for a long time is when you go back to a project that you haven't looked at for many, many years. This dungeon set is at least 15 years old, I think maybe 20, but I had several unpainted tiles as I came to look at using it again more recently, and I looked at the floor tiles and I thought, how did I paint those? The walls, I just took upon and said, that looks a lot like GW's Mechanica Standard Grey, dry brushed over black. And I think the new walls fit fairly well with the old walls. But the floor tiles, and the actual edging for the kind of brown that I've used, that's a new one and that's an old one. The floor I've got completely wrong. What's the solution to this? Well, gotta reach over. That was a bit further than I thought. I didn't quite put this in view. The old, sure many people have told you about this, painter's recipe book. When you've been in the hobby as long as I have, you've gone back to projects and thought, I can't quite remember how I painted those. And at the time you think, it's fairly straightforward, that's just Calgar blue and that's a Vallejo chocolate brown. You come back to that years later, is that chocolate brown? Is that leather brown? Is that a quick shade dip? There's lots of different ways you could have achieved a very similar result. So I would strongly advise start keeping a painting diary, journal or recipe book. You can keep these as complicated or as simple as you like, but at the very least list the colours you used. The only other tip I would have on that is if you use Vallejo colours, some of the names of the colours have changed. Like refractive green is what was reflective green. I know it sounds like a small change, but when you try and buy that bottle of paint again, so I've found just putting the numbers down more useful. As time's gone on, when the recipes are a bit more complicated, I've tried to, some I've just put, I've done the boots like this and the bell like that, but in others I've actually put down the process, the order in which I did them, particularly for vehicles when you've got like dry brushes or over brushes and washes. You're going to get different results if you do them in different orders. And this really came to a head when I was repainting this recently, because the two types of floor tiles are quite different and I'm going to have to do more work to colour match them. Final contributor for today's fantasy episode, we have Jason from Gaming Nights with his very small fantasy army.
So I'm going to show you something I've been working on for this week's topic. It's a halfling army that I've been had on the back burner for a while. I've got it going now, especially with this lockdown stuff. So I'll show you what I've done so far. And if you like it, you can check out the rest on my Battle Knights channel. And the idea behind it is that it's because I'm one of those people that like, really variety is the spice of life. So I have a lot of games that I like to try and play. So I'm designing the army so that it works with Dragon Rampant as well as Warlords of Erewhon. And I could even, this is an older verb, but I could even use it for Age of Sigmar. So those are the three general rules that I'm going to be using. I'll flip it around, show you the army, and then give you a brief description of what I'm doing. And then if you want to see more, you can check out my channel, Battle Knights. So here you see what I've almost finished completed. I've got a unit of warriors over here, a unit of crossbows over there. I've got a leader, a wizard, a cockatrice. This is the cockatrice is from a board game called Massive Darkness. The rest of the models are all from TT Combat's Halfling Kickstarter. I've also got obviously 3 bears at the back there. So I mean, it's pretty obvious infantry, ranged unit, greater war beast and lesser war beasts. Those are kind of how they would be used in Dragon Rampant, but then in, say, for example, in Warlords of Erewhon, they'd be used as sheriffs, archers, cave bears, cockatrice, and then the leaders from that respective rules. The idea, obviously, is that they're compatible. Like, for example, in Warlords of Erewhon, you use units of 10. So, just to show you the reinforcements that I'm going to be working on, I've got a unit of bolt throw that are going to be sort of added to that. These two are going to be added to the warrior unit to bulk them up for 212 models for Dragon Rampant. And then I've got a leader on goat over there, and a unit of goat riders at the back. So that's what I'm working on currently. Halflings, because I'm short and hairy, I guess. See you later.
Gotta love halflings, man. And that cockatrice is looking really nice. Hopefully at some point we can see them on the table in some format. So I did mention earlier I was going to talk to you about Kings of War. I'm going to talk to it only briefly because I think some of you have seen these before. Kings of War is a game that I like the look of, and I have made a start. You can see the dust on these. That's how dusty it is in this room. These were finished about 6 months ago and have been sat on the top there. So what I like about Kings of War from a modeller's perspective is the fact that it's a rank and flank game, but the unit has hit points rather than the number of models. So although notionally this base is supposed to be 20 figures, I think, I've actually got about 11 or 12 on here, and there's just some space to allow for a little bit of the scenery to develop. And it also helps that you don't have to buy or paint especially nearly as many models to get the same result. So that's the kind of 20-man regiment for the dwarves, and this is the 40-man, I think they might be called legions or hordes. Never actually got round to playing Kings of War, partly because this is about half of the models. I mean, I've painted, I think, 100 dwarves, and it's nowhere near a full army. And then I've got to start working on the second one. I've got some skeletons done. And there is a painting video if you want to do these like this, and that'll be up in a doofer. But that's me in fantasy. In the distant future, at some point, when I got 2 armies together, we will see some Kings of War on the channel, no doubt. It's something that I'm looking forward to trying. Watched a few battle reports and so forth. Looks good. It's around about this point in the episode, I usually recommend a YouTuber to you. In this particular case, there's a little bit of variation. The guy who's coming up, IDIC Beer, is a YouTuber, and you'll hear about his YouTube channel in a future episode. But at the moment, he's going to talk to you about a Facebook group, the Wargames Unification group, which is a fantastic group. So take it away, Nick. Thank you.
Nick speaking, and welcome. I'm from the channel IDIC Beer 40k. However, I'm not here to promote my channel. I'm here to promote my Wargamers Unification group. Now, I've been on YouTube for well over 10 years, so I know about all of the struggles that a wargaming YouTube channel can have getting their videos in front of their audience. So a few years ago, I set up a group called the Wargamers Unification Group. This group was designed for people to share their content, and not only that, for people who don't have a YouTube channel to find new content. The group is based on Facebook, and we only have one rule, that's post what you like as long as it's wargaming related. We've got a lot of diverse, different channels on there as well, so no matter what you like about the hobby, you're bound to find some new content. Bolt action, historicals, Warhammer 40k, model scale making, lore channels, fun channels, hobby channels, painting tutorial channels, building channels. We've got the lots. There's a big group of us, so if you're interested in joining us, then why not check the link out in the description below. It's the IDIC Beer Wargamers Unification group. Come and join us, we would love to have you. Beam me up.
The final part of today's episode is to have another look at Clueless Mike's Demon Princes, his various kit bashes and conversions. This is the 7th one now, I think. Let's see it, Mike.
So then we go on to real kind of like kitbash type of territory. So this one here is a Nurgle Demon Prince to go into my Death Guard army. I didn't want something that looked similar to the previous Demon Princes, which I generally all use in my Chaos army. I wanted him to look like a proper mutated beast. So this is from the Rogue Trader Kill Team set. It's one of the Gellerpox infected, and this one I believe is known as a Nasher Screamer, as you can tell by his horrid belly there with all his mouths and tongues coming out of it. So he was from that, and I cut him up and modelled him quite a lot. I did various green stuff. The actual model itself has kind of like the heads on the arm there. They have loads of kind of like hair poking up out of them. The actual head that comes on the model has a mass amount of big pointy mohawk that you're supposed to kind of like paint in lively colours. But I cut all that stuff off. The actual head on him there is a spare Mortarion head, because I have a Mortarion, but it comes with 2 heads, so why not stick that on him? You can see the armour that's kind of like covering various bits. He comes with the robes, but the greener parts of armour you can see there, they're all from, I'm trying to remember, the Fantasy Blightlords kit they're all generally from. The 2 shoulder pads, which are kind of like bent and mutated on the top of him, they're from the Terminator kit, the newer plastic one, and I've just basically bent them really out of shape. The horns and such, I've just stuck those on. They've come from various kits. The tentacle, I think, is from a Chaos Spawn kit. And if we turn him around, you can see the big turbines on his back. So I wanted him to be a flying Demon Prince, but I couldn't find any wings that I really liked at the time. So I thought, hey, they look pretty cool. They come from one of the Blight drones, the Death Guard Blight drones. And they make a really good addition to the model, I think. I think they really bring it to life. I've given him kind of like a fuel pack on the back there, and he's got various kind of bits. You can see he's got a nice kind of like organ there dangling from one of his hooks. And I'm really pleased with the model. I think he looks properly nice and gross and not like any of the previous Demon Princes I've showed you. And he's reasonably on size. Again, I've got him mounted on a bit of slate just to bring him up to the height of one of the standard models. But yeah, really like him.
That's all we've got for you this week. I hope you found it interesting, folks. And remember, if you can, stay home, If you have to go to work, stay safe and take care of each other. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
First up is the good old Orc Black Hawk bollocks. Right then, first up, one of my Blood Bowl Orc. Oh, you prick.
Okay, so this week we're talking about fantasy miniatures. So I've got a couple of bits to show you. First off, there are two D&D miniatures that I've worked on recently. These are for a group I play with every few Saturdays. I've got a Tabaxi Rogue and I've got a Goliath Paladin there. They're both from the Nolz's Marvellous Minis range that D&D TSR, or let's actually get the name right. Wizards of the Coast.
Thank you, Kaiser. This week is Fantasy Week.